Chapter 34. Ancient Cave. The four of them barely managed to walk out from the pile of bat corpses like a mountain. However, they were all in a sorry state, covered in filthy dark color blood, and the stench was unbearable. They were all disciples of Qingyun Sect, usually clean and tidy, especially ZhuXian from Shaoju Peak, who had a naturally clean disposition. At this moment, the situation was even more uncomfortable for her than being cut 3 times. The four of them hurriedly walked towards a distant place, only wanting to get as far away from the disgusting bat corpses as possible. After walking a long way, they arrived at a relatively flat rock. The four of them patted their clothes, tittied up for a while, only brushing off some debris. However, the blood stains and foul odors seemed impossible to get rid of. Zhang Xiaofan and the other 2 men were somewhat better off, but ZhuXian, who usually had a cold face, was now even colder. She vigorously wiped her clothes, rubbing hard, showing no intention of giving up until all the disgusting things were removed from her body. However, these blood stains seemed particularly sticky. Soon, Chahao, Xingshashu, and Zhang Xiaofan gave up their efforts, but ZhuXian still refused to give up. The 3 men looked at each other helplessly. Even Chahao, who was the most experienced, looked a bit embarrassed now, not knowing what to say. As the 4 of them remained silent, with only ZhuXian frowning and rubbing her clothes, suddenly, there were a few whistles in the sky. They looked up to see 4 streaks of light in the sky, 2 yellow, 1 white, and 1 blue. After a moment, these 4 streaks of light landed in front of them. After a flicker, 4 figures appeared. On the left were 2 monks. The one behind was tall, with thick eyebrows and big eyes, and a face full of muscles, giving off an imposing aura. If it weren't for his monk's robe, he might have been mistaken for a bandit. But standing in front of him was a young monk who was a head shorter than him, completely different from him, with fair skin and bright eyes. He wore a pure white monk's robe, looking somewhat delicate, but there was no hint of disdain in his demeanor. On the right were a young man and a young woman, both handsome and beautiful, standing together as if they were a perfect match, like the golden boy and jade maiden in front of the gods. To the 4 of them from Qingyun Sect, seeing their blood-stained clothes, the 4 strangers frowned. The young and fair-skinned monk said the Buddhist mantra first and asked, "Amitabha, may I ask if you are disciples of Qingyun Sect?" The 4 of them glanced at each other. Chahao stepped forward and greeted, "Yes, I'm Chahao. May I ask who you are? Double quotes. The young monk smiled slightly and said, "I am Fashing from Tianyin Temple, and this is my junior brother, Fashion." These 2 are outstanding disciples of Incense Valley, Lizan and Yanhong. The tall and muscular Fashion greeted in a muffled voice, but Lizan and Yanhong from Incense Valley were proud and nodded slightly, showing some disdain even though they returned the greeting. Chahao frowned, ignoring the 2 from Incense Valley, and turned to Fashing. I've long admired the name of Fashing, brother from Tianyin Temple, renowned as a rare talent praised by the righteous path for 1,000 years. Seeing you today, indeed your demeanor is exceptional. Fashing smiled faintly. Brother Che is too kind, this junior is dull. It is only through the grace of my master, Puhong, that I have been taught true teachings, hoping to do some good for the world. I dare not compare myself to the senior brothers of Qingyun Sect. Chahao laughed and waved his hand. Brother Fashing is too modest. Let me introduce my junior brothers and sister to you. He then introduced Zhang Xiaofan and the others to them. Zhang Xiaofan followed their lead in greeting, but somehow he felt that when Fashing introduced him, his eyes seemed to brighten a bit, giving him an extra look. At this moment, Li Zun's face, who had been sidelined since the conversation started, didn't look too good. After Chahao finished introducing everyone, he suddenly spoke coldly. "Che brother, Qingyun Sect has always considered itself the leader of the righteous path, and Taoist techniques are unparalleled in the world. How is it that today, upon meeting, everyone is in such a sorry state?" The faces of the 4 from Qingyun Sect changed. Zhang Xiaofan, looking at his arrogant attitude, felt even more repulsed. With a glance, he saw that Liz Weki had stopped wiping her clothes at some point. Her jade-like face was frosty as she looked coldly at the two from Incense Valley, but her gaze lingered more on the beautiful woman named Yin Hong. Che Hao, experienced in worldly affairs, though slightly annoyed, quickly recovered. He chuckled and said, "To be honest, the three of us from Qingyun Sect came here last night, intending to explore the ancient Bat Cave. Unexpectedly, we encountered countless bats. Double quotes. Upon hearing this, the expressions of Fashang and the others changed. The tall and muscular Fashion widened his eyes and said in a rough voice, "Those countless beasts in the ancient Bat Cave are ferocious and difficult to deal with." Che Hao, quick-witted as he was, understood that these four people in front of him had probably arrived a few days earlier and had also encountered these troublesome creatures. His mind turned quickly, but suddenly he heard Zhang Xiaofan laugh and step forward, smiling at Fashion. "Brother Fashion, so you've also encountered those blood-sucking bats?" Fashion nodded, seeming straightforward. "Yes, there were too many bats, so we had to retreat." Zhang Xiaofan sighed. Let me tell you, we encountered those bats last night too. We wanted to exterminate them for the sake of the people, but from morning till night, no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't kill them all. In the end, we could only drive these monsters back into the cave, but we also ended up covered in filth. Alas, shameful, shameful. He turned to look at Che Hao, and the two of them exchanged a smile, saying in unison, "Shameful, shameful." The expressions of the others changed. The difference was that Li Zun from Incense Valley snorted with disdain, while the beautiful woman, Yan Hong, seemed a bit shy, but her face clearly showed disbelief. Meanwhile, Fashang from Tianyin Temple smiled without saying a word, and Fashion showed admiration on his face. Zhang Xiaofan was stunned for a moment, looking at the two who were smiling brightly. After a while, Fashang smiled and said, "This time, the matter of Quangsang Mountain requires our three sect's elders to let our younger generation gain some experience. Now that we're all here, it's time for us to rest for a day. Tomorrow morning, we'll explore the ancient Bat Cave." At this point, Li Zun, standing beside them, coldly snorted. What Brother Fashang said makes sense. Otherwise, after we go in, someone will come up with excuses again. Except for Zhang Xiaofan, all three from Qingyun Sect, Che Hao, Zhang Xiaofan, and Liz Weki had been greatly favored by their respective sects and masters since childhood, and each had some arrogance in their bones. Che Hao snorted, ignoring Li Zun, and turned to Fashang. Let's listen to Brother Fashang. It's better for us to give in." Li Zun suddenly became dumbfounded, and only when he saw Liz Weki's gaze did his expression change slightly. Meanwhile, Tianyin Temple's Fashang came forward with a smile. "Brothers, we came here to investigate the remnants of the demonic cult. Before we left, our elders must have instructed us. If they knew we were acting rashly here, we might be punished when we return. Besides, it's just a minor matter. Let's all step back, shall we?"